Welcome to Final Whistle ATX. It's Wyatt. We're at BD Riley. We missed you last week. Well, I should say I missed you last week. I was over here, but my fearless teammates filled in perfectly for me.
We did okay.
We technically did 2 shows last week.
Yeah.
We did one with you two
Exactly.
that never saw the light of day, and then when we did one with Harley and I. So,
On Zoom.
Yeah.
Well, we got one out. That's what matters.
Yeah.
But Nick, why don't you start us off and give us the 3 big things from last week?
Yeah, so 3 big things. First of all, another loss. You know, now we're 2-4. We had a little hot streak for a while, a 2-game hot streak, and then here we are again. Now we've got a losing streak going, 3 games on the trot losing. So that's kind of the lead headline of the week. On a more positive note though, Austin FC and Q2 announced that they'll be doing 100% capacity at the games.
Yes.
And they released the tickets now, which is great, not just for season ticket holders, but for day of games, so that's fantastic. And then back to a negative note, we've got a couple more injuries again.
Yeah.
And that will be a story going into this weekend against Seattle, and then possibly the following weekend too, depending on how serious the injuries are. So I figure with 3 big things, 1 good, 2 not so great, but looking forward to getting butts in the seats.
And 2 players that might be starters getting injured as well with Romagna and Pereira, so that's definitely not ideal.
So what was your biggest takeaway from last week?
I've been thinking about this and I'm not sure about the best way to put it. I feel like Austin had a lot of the ball compared to how many chances they had. And if I was being really harsh, I would call it pointless possession, which sounds a little too harsh. But I guess what I mean by that is a lot of sideways passes, a lot of backwards passes, and again, that's okay sometimes, but you've got to create chances with that. And I don't think they created enough chances in this game. In fact, I don't really remember, except from a couple of shots from range, a time when they really went close. So that was definitely an issue for me. I think, again, if you play those short passes and the sideways, it works out as long as there's some end product. And I think this was the most worried I've been as an Austin FC fan, just with the lack of end product this week against Nashville.
Yeah, we had a shot early. It was Cecilio Dominguez, and he was in the box, and it went wide. And even the announcer was like, "Oh, wait, I missed it. I was off." So that really felt like the only realistic opportunity we had the whole game to score.
Yeah.
Even though we had most possession, which is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the 2nd week in a row we've had most possession and still lost and weren't able to score a goal.
I think that's the style of play that Joshua wants to play, keep the ball. And you've seen Barcelona do that in the past with great success, and Manchester City play that way right now. It can definitely work, and I think we've seen it work with Austin. But when you're keeping the ball and just not having that end product and maybe a disconnect between the midfield and the attack, that's when you have problems.
My big takeaway of the week was that the second half was so much improved from the first. I was somewhat surprised with the slow start in the first half, considering last week's loss. You thought that they would be out for...
Come out with more energy.
Exactly, but it took them a while to get going. And by the time they did, I thought the second half was an improvement, but it was too late. We had the goal disallowed, obviously, and I think it was a correct call. But there was more happening and more hope in the second half. I just think it was too little too late, and they didn't have... They could have had another 20 minutes and maybe would have done it, but there wasn't that much time.
I think there's been a couple of games this season where the substitutes for Austin have come on and made a big difference. And that's good, that's definitely a good thing, but you almost don't want to have to rely on that. And there's been a couple of times this season where you're kind of just waiting for those changes to be made for the spark. The spark was missing for the first hour or so of the Nashville game.
Yeah, and that leads me to my big takeaway, which I mentioned 2 weeks ago, John Gallagher. And I thought what I said then is that he's almost better as a super sub because he brings that spark, whether you need that extra goal or whether you need to hold the lead and go defensive, but you still have somebody who's, you still have a scoring presence. But I think with Danny Hosen, we've seen again, he just isn't what we need right now. And I'm not saying he can't get there, but I just think John Gallagher right now today is the guy who needs to be starting right now.
Wow.
And so my big takeaway was that, I don't want to sound too negative because this is not getting off too great for Austin FC, but this episode. But I just have some questions about the substitutions because I think some of those guys I felt could have been starting. I think Stroud, for example, every time he's on the field, he creates opportunities.
Can I just say, with Stroud, I had a roller coaster of emotions because when me and Nick did our Zoom podcast last week, I singled out Jared Stroud as a guy who had won his place in the team and really impressed me. And then he's on the bench to start this one, and I'm like, oh no, I look so dumb. Then he comes on and scores, and I'm like, now I look so smart. And then the goal is ruled out. So it was a roller coaster in my
That
brain.
whole game was a roller coaster.
I think maybe what we're seeing is a little bit of kind of the consequences of playing so many away games in a row.
Yeah, and Wyatt, to put a bow on this, you said about being a little negative to start this week. For as long as this sport has existed, there's been people in the pub talking smack about their favourite team, right? Or saying that the manager doesn't know what they're doing or whatever. And for us right now, it's sitting in BD Riley's here and saying, oh, we didn't like what we saw this much this week. But that won't be every week.
We got an exciting game coming up against Seattle. But before we get to that, we actually have some Twitter questions.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You asked, and you answered. So here we go. Let's start off from Chelsea. Just watched the first episode of #Final Whistle ATX. And I'm just curious if any of y'all have ever played soccer. Now, I got to be honest, I read that and thought, a little harsh. I don't know what she's trying to say there. But I think, but with that being said, I think did you play soccer? I guess we'll start off with that. Did you?
I played. I felt like every day as a kid, I was always kicking a ball around. I was not blessed with natural ability. I'm just gonna put that out there, but I was okay. I could handle myself. I guess I retired from competitive soccer when I was 18. I didn't know I was retiring at the time, but that's what happened. And I actually really miss playing. But yeah, used to play a lot as a kid, not so much now. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I played through middle school and into the first year of high school on the high school team, and then we moved. So then I was more playing club level for the rest of high school, and then some soccer in college as well from like an intramural perspective. So, just like Harley, I've been playing since I could walk. And then you get older and you're trying to fit it in and trying to play. Now I'm teaching my son how to play soccer, and we've got a goal in the backyard now, so he's on his way.
So I did play soccer. I played until about 7th grade. Oh no, yeah, it was till 7th grade. Like you, I was not blessed with the natural ability, but I did play, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm not to brag, I was the captain of the team in 6th grade.
Wow.
Not a big deal, I know.
We should get you an armband for the show.
Well, you are the captain of this podcast, so.
Thank you for that. But
my captain.
and like Harley, I was forced to retire for no reason other than I wasn't very good. I continued to play for fun. I actually always played soccer for fun, but competitively I stopped playing after 6th grade.
Is it called retiring if you stop in 6th grade?
No.
Retiring sounds better because it sounds like it's not my fault. You know what I mean? So with that being said, question number 2 from James. And keep asking questions. #Final Whistle ATX. Another disappointing result for Austin FC. With majority of possession, no goals, and more worryingly, only one shot on target. What are they missing? A prolific striker or a creative number 10? So I'll pose that. I guess I can start with you. How do you address that question?
I mean, my takeaway from that question is, if you want to play with a creative number 10, you've got to change formations, because the 4-3-3 that we're running right now, that doesn't incorporate a number 10 to play in that role between the midfield and the strikers. I don't know if Josh Wolf wants to change formation. I feel like he wants to use that 4-3-3. That's part of his DNA as a manager. I think he wants to make it work. I think we have players that could play that position, like Pochettino. I think would be great as a number 10.
To ask, who do you think could play that?
Yeah, I think that would work really well, but I just don't see that happening. And then couple that with the other part of the question, looking at the number 9, I think that's really where we could use an upgrade. And Danny Houston, it hasn't worked so far for one reason or another. Maybe he'll continue to pick things up as we go along. Gallagher's been good off the bench, but that's for me where I land on that question. I don't know about you, Nick, but I feel like the number 9 would be nice.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think it's just more about the decision making near the penalty box has not been great. Now the hope that I have is that they have made good decision making the first few games, and they need to get back to that. Whether it's choosing to cross, choosing to cut it back to someone at the top of the box when you're close to the end of the line, or whether it's putting your head down and shooting, not lifting your head up and having the ball go so high over the goal that it was barely registering as a shot on target. So decision making in that final section of the pitch could improve, but I'm hopeful that it can because they've made some pretty good decisions there in the past.
I think part of it is, we're giving a hard time to Danny Houston, but I think part of it is he's got to get the ball in good places to be able to make the plays, and I don't know that he's had that opportunity. And I was being hard on him earlier, but in his defense, he hasn't gotten the ball in opportune areas, in my opinion. I mean, he's gotten some decent crosses, but I'd love to see what he could do just outside the box. You know, maybe passing some through balls through. I don't know. I think that John Gallagher, to me, would help that problem, but it's also not necessarily them. I think it's a mixture of so many things. It's not just one or two positions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think John Gallagher helps it, but it's also not all his fault. I mean, the midfield needs to do a better job of getting. I mean, it seems like we pass so well out of the back. We pass so well to the corners, and then we cross it inside. We very rarely try and go in through the center, and so it's hard to get the striker involved in that position.
This is like slightly off the question here.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to be too
Final
harsh.
whistle off the cuff.
Final whistle off the cuff. Cecilio Dominguez is the highest paid player in the Austin FC team. He's one of the designated players. He's a Paraguay international. Have we had like 45 good minutes from him the second half against Colorado? And can we have a little bit more, like from the best player on the team? He's meant to be this creative spark on the wing, and he's definitely shown flashes, and I get that he's adapting to a new league and a new country. But let's have a little bit more from Cecilio, I think.
That's a good point. I think when he's great, but there's parts where he disappears as well.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. So with that being said, let's move forward to Seattle, the best team in the MLS. And I'm going to put up the standings here so y'all can see from home. But Seattle, number 1 team in the MLS. Austin, 3-game losing streak. So what can we do to make this not become a 4-game losing streak?
First of all, you better remember to put that table up, because otherwise that's going to look silly in editing.
Yeah, you're right.
3-game losing streak and then going into Seattle is scary. I don't know how much more needs to be said than that. They're the best team in the league. Austin is in a bit of a rut right now, needing a good result. It's a little scary. What do you think?
It's to the point now that the fans who are going to the first game at Q2 are going to remember those last couple games leading up to it. You want to be able to walk into Q2 Stadium with your head held high that you've had the last couple of games being good. I think everyone's going to forget about the rest of the season once we start getting home games, except maybe the games leading up to it. So if they can come up with something, even if it's a draw, or even if it's a 1-0 loss to Seattle, or if they have some opportunities, or they start showing some creativity in front of goal, we can only hope. But I think many of us are sort of expecting a loss this weekend.
So here's my prediction for Seattle. I'm going to give the prediction.
Oh, nice.
I think Seattle is going to come out, and Austin FC is going to not have great energy right off the bat, and it's going to be 1-0 in the first 20 minutes.
This is very specific, by the way.
Yeah,
Keep going.
I
love
get
it.
even more specific. So
Spoiler
I think at that
alert.
point, we're going to find out exactly what Austin FC is made of. Are we going to fold, or are we going to continue to fight, or are we going to just say we lost this when it's Seattle, we're away, our 7th game, we're on the road, we're down 1-0 early, crazy crowd, or are they going to dig deep and try and get a point? And I think we tied at halftime.
Okay.
It would be the 47th minute. And I think going into the second half, we find a way to leave 2-1. We find a way to get some points. And I think we win next week, and I think we come into Q2 Stadium on a winning streak.
So next week, Nick's going to bring you a captain's armband, and I'm going to bring you a crystal ball, okay?
I'm telling you, you heard it here first. I think Seattle, here's the other thing too.
Crystal soccer ball.
Because of where Austin FC is it possible Seattle could overlook us?
Here's the thing. So we're 2-4 now. We've got 2 away games left.
Right.
If we win them both, then we're right at that dead even mark again.
With a ton of home games.
With a ton of home games coming up.
Yeah.
If we won 1 of the remaining 2 away games,
right,
I don't think that puts us in a bad position going into a good stretch of home games, especially now that we're going to have the ability to take advantage of the home field advantage, of which there wasn't as much with a lot of the first few games of the season having very limited crowds.
And Wyatt, this game is Sunday night, right?
This game, let me check my notes, is going to be Sunday at 8:30 on FS1.
Yes.
And speaking of all the home games, once we start to get home, you're going to start to see a lot of games on the CW Austin, on KBVO, and on KXAN. So make sure to visit our website to find a ton of Austin FC content. In fact, Harley here is going to write some stories this week to get you ready for Seattle.
Well,
promoting our social.
Let's hope we get something out of this game against Seattle. If you have questions for us, use #Final Whistle ATX, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.